Good morning. Yesterday we looked at the law of sines, and like the law of sines, the law of cosines can be used to find side lengths and angle measurements for any triangle. Okay, so given triangle ABC here, let's look at what the law of cosine says. A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of A, okay? Now, it looks like a lot. Let's go ahead and write down the other two, and then I'll explain it. B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times the cosine of B. And then C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB times the cosine of C. Okay, so let's see how we can remember this. If we're trying to find A squared, or A, okay, that's also the angle that we're given, and that's going to be the angle measure that we're given. Everything else is the other two sides, and it really doesn't matter which order you go in. You just got to make sure that A and A go together, and then everything else is the other two sides. So let's look. This is giving us an angle measure. X is what we're looking for. The corresponding side is what's going to go here. So if that's a number, it's going to be a number squared. If it's X, it's going to be X squared. So X squared equals, now for B and C, or A and B, whatever you want to call them, we're using the other two the other two numbers. So 7 squared plus 12 squared minus 2, and then we're just substituting in those numbers again, times 7 times 12 times the cosine of A, which is the only angle that we're given. So it's the only thing that could go there. Okay? So let's simplify this. We need to follow order of operations. 7 squared is 49. 12 squared is 144. Okay, now we can go ahead and multiply. 2 times 7 is 14, and 14 times 12 is 168. Now we need to multiply before we add. Okay, so let's do this multiplication here. 168 times the cosine of 65 is 70.99, so let's use 71. So we got 49 plus 144 minus 71. So now we can just go left to right. So 49 plus 144 minus 71 is 122. So you got X squared equals 122. And you take the square root of that to get X by itself. And square root of 122 is 11.04, which is, we'll just round to 11. Okay, so it's not as difficult as it looks. It's just a longer formula. So let's substitute in for this one. We have the angle measure of 108. So what we're looking for is X. So we're going to say X squared equals. Remember, the other two numbers are being added and squared. So 20 squared plus 25 squared minus, that's the only minus in the problem, 2 times those two numbers again, so 20 times 25, times always cosine, because it's the law of cosines, the angle that we're given, so 108. Okay, so 20 squared is 400. 25 squared is 625. Now we can multiply 2 times 20 times 25 times the cosine of 108. All of that. Let's just do 2 times 20 times 25. It's 1,000 times the cosine of 108. Okay, we need to multiply this. that gives us negative 309, so it's going to be plus 309. So 400 plus 625 plus 309. We're just going to go left to right. You get 1334. 1,334. And that equals x squared, so we take the square root and get x equals 36.5. Okay, let's look at one more. Okay, again, angle measure that we're given. Across from that, its corresponding side is x, so that's what we're looking for. So x squared equals our other two numbers squared and added, so 13 squared plus 17 squared, minus 2 times those numbers again, 13 times 17, times the cosine of the angle that's given, which is 34. Okay, so follow order of operations. 13 squared is 169. 17 squared is 289. And we can go ahead and multiply. So minus 2 times 13 times 17 times the cosine of 34 is 366.4. So go from left to right. 169 plus 289 minus 366.4 give us 91.6. So you get x squared equals 91.6. And then to solve it, you take the square root to get x by itself. And you get 9.6. Okay? Number 4 works the exact same way. Let's look at something that's different. All right, finding angle measures. Now, I'm going to rewrite the law of cosines here. Now, it doesn't matter if we're using A, B, or C. So I'm just going to write one of them. So let's just say A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of A. Okay, now, this one doesn't give us the angle. So X is going to go here where our angle should go. Our corresponding side is 7. That's the beginning. Okay, so 7 squared equals, then we use our other two sides, 11 squared plus 12 squared minus 2, use those sides again, times 11 times 12 times the cosine of x, which is what we don't know. Okay, so let's follow order of operations. We got to get the cosine of x by itself. So 7 squared, 49. 11 squared is 121, and 12 squared is 144. Okay, and we can go ahead and multiply this. So minus 2 times 11 times 12. Now we can't put cosine in there with it. So it's 264 cosine x. Okay, so I want you to pay attention closely here. You can put these two together, but you cannot put this, the 264, with it because it is connected and being multiplied by the cosine of x. So we're going to have to get rid of it in just a minute. But we can put these two together. 121 plus 144 is 265. Please don't put those together. And you want to because that's just going to be 1, but you can't. Don't do it. Okay, so we need to get rid of this 265. It's positive, so we can subtract it to get rid of it. So 49 minus 265 is negative 216. And we have negative 264 cosine of x. Okay, so now you should be able to see that it is connected and it's being multiplied, so we need to divide by negative 264. My advice to you is to leave that as a fraction at this moment, because if you put it as a decimal, then you're going to have to substitute it in, and it's just going to be more difficult. So now we have the cosine of x equals that, which is going to really be positive 216 over positive 264. And remember, when we are finding an angle measure, which is what we're doing here, you use the inverse cosine. So shift cosine of 216 divided by 264. And you should get 35.1. And remember, that's an angle measure, so that's in degrees. Okay, so let's look at another. Again, we're trying to find the angle measure. We start off with its corresponding side, which is 35. So 35 squared equals our other two sides squared and added. So 16 squared plus 24 squared. This is always subtraction 2 times those sides again, 16 times 24, times the cosine of the angle, which is x, because we don't know it. Alright, so we're going to follow the same steps. Order of operations, square. 35 squared, 1,225. 16 squared is 256. 24 squared is 576. You can go ahead and multiply. So minus 2 times 16 times 24. Remember, don't include the cosine there. But it is connected. So when we're here, we can only put these two together. We cannot put this one with it. So 256 plus 576 is 832. And remember that 768 is connected to the cosine x. So we can get rid of this 832 by subtracting it. You get 393 equals negative 678 cosine of x. Be careful, just because that's got a negative there does not mean that we add it, okay? It's connected to that cosine x, so we need to divide by negative 768. Now we need to do that on both sides. So we're going to get the cosine of x equals 393 over negative 768. So remember, when we're finding an angle measure, you're using the inverse cosine, so that's cosine of negative 1, and in that parentheses, you're going to put that fraction. So 393 divided by negative 768, which is 120.77, so we'll say 120.8. That's degrees because we found an angle measure. Alright, let's look at one more. Alright, we are not given the angle, but we can start with our corresponding side, which is 21. So it's 21 squared equals. Here we're using our other two side lengths, so 16 squared plus 26 squared. Minus 2, that doesn't change on any problem. Our other two sides again, 16 times 26. And that's times the cosine of x, which we don't know, which is what we're looking for. Okay, so now we are going to follow order of operations. 21 squared is 441. 16 squared is 256. And 26 squared is 676. We can go ahead and multiply here. 2 times 16 times 26 is 832. Now remember, just like in all the others, we can put these two together, but cannot include the minus 832 because it's connected to the cosine x. So we're going to add 256 plus 676. That's 932. Okay, so we need to get rid of this 932 so we can subtract it. So 441 minus 932 is negative 491. And that equals negative 832 in the cosine of x. Alright, to get that x by itself, we got to get rid of the negative 832. So we divide, because it's being multiplied by the cosine x, it's not being subtracted from. Okay? So we're going to have the inverse cosine of negative 491 over negative 832, which is going to make them both positive. So we're just going to say 491 over 832. So inverse cosine, shift cosine, 491 divided by 832. Just 53.8. And that's degrees because it was an angle measure. Alright, you finished the two that we did not do.